guarding the heart, understanding the affection through the temperaments, and why the phlegmatic may be the most misunderstood temperament. Hey, friends, and welcome back to Faithfully Connected. I am Donna, your host, and today I want to talk a little bit about one of the most important areas of our temperament and in temperament counseling, and that is the affection area. This is the area where our deepest emotional needs live. It's where we experience love, it's where we experience rejection, and it's where trust is built or even broken. It's where emotional wounds are formed, and it's often where many of our biggest life decisions are made. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 4:23, above all else guard your heart, for everything you do will flow from it. Let's think about that for a moment, because everything flows from our heart. Our relationships flow from our heart, our emotions flow from our heart, our decisions, our reactions, our fears, our responses, everything. That is why understanding the affection area of our temperament is really important. Because if we don't understand our heart, we can easily allow our emotions to lead us somewhere where God really never intended us to go. In Jeremiah 17:9, that tells us the heart is very deceitful and above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? Now, this doesn't mean that our feelings are bad. God gave us emotions, and emotions are gifts. But emotions were never designed to lead us, and they were never designed to inform us. And God's truth must lead us. Wisdom must lead us. The Holy Spirit must lead us. Our emotions simply help us identify what's happening in the inside. And today, I want to focus heavily on one temperament in particular, and that is one that often goes unnoticed in the affection area, and that is the phlegmatic. Because many phlegmatics spend years hurting silently, while everyone around them assumes that they are perfectly fine. In the affection area, and it's a simple but powerful question they need to ask: am I deeply loved? And every temperament asks this question very differently. Every temperament experiences affection differently, and every temperament experiences rejection differently, and they respond differently. And when the affection need goes unmet long enough, we're going to see stress, we're going to see anxiety, we're even going to see resentment, distance, and eventually the breakdown of a relationship. It will begin to suffer, not because people don't love each other, but because they don't understand each other. Now, the phlegmatic affection area may be one of the most understood areas in all of the temperament counseling. Let me tell you why. Phlegmatics rarely complain about anything. They rarely demand attention. They rarely express emotional needs openly, and they rarely create any conflict. Most people assume they're just fine. They don't need much. They're easygoing. They're content. But many times that is only what is happening on the surface. Underneath that calm exterior is often a person who has deep emotional needs that really have never been communicated. The phlegmatic really desires emotional safety, acceptance, compassion, stability, consistent, and peace. Connection. The difference is they often don't know how to ask for those things, or they've learned somewhere in life that asking wasn't worth it. Maybe they expressed needs in the past and were actually ignored. Or maybe they experienced a conflict and decided it just wasn't worth it. Maybe they learn to survive by adapting to everyone else's needs. So instead of expressing them, what they need, they kind of withdraw and they adapt, they settle, they remain silent. They tell themselves, it's all right, I'll deal with it. It's not that important. I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want any conflict. But here's the problem with that. The need doesn't disappear, it simply goes underground. And I believe many phlegmatics are misunderstood, not because they don't have emotions, but because they have learned to hide them. And I especially see this in men. Many men grew up hearing messages like, man up, don't cry, be strong, handle it yourself, don't talk about our feelings. Over time, they've learned that expressing some sort of emotion felt unsafe, so they stopped expressing them. And the temperament, the phlegmatic, has already a natural tendency toward a very peaceful avoidance or any conflict and internal processing. So now we're going to add an environment that discourages emotional expression. The result will often be a man who appears emotionally unavailable. but underneath the surface may be just years of disappointment or grief or rejection and loneliness and hurt. And honestly, the problem isn't that they have no emotion. The problem is that they have learned to survive from disconnecting. And what starts as a protection eventually became a prison. And many struggle to communicate, and they struggle to express affection and struggle to be vulnerable and struggle to share what is happening inside of them. Not because he doesn't care, not because he doesn't love, but because he has spent years suppressing the very emotions God wanted to heal. I don't believe God created men to be emotionally numb because Jesus himself expressed emotion. We saw Jesus cry, we saw him grieve, we saw him love, and he showed compassion. He experienced sorrow, he experienced it in his heart. And God is not asking men to become unemotional. God is asking men to become whole. Healing begins when a man realizes that vulnerability isn't weakness, and honesty is not weakness, and communication is not weakness. And allowing God into wounded places is not weakness, it's courage. And I believe many phlegmatic men are not emotionally unavailable, they are emotionally wounded. And I believe God wants to heal that wound, not so they become someone different, but so they become who he created them to be, a man who can love deeply, a man who can lead faithfully, communicate honestly, and experience the freedom that comes from no longer carrying everything alone. And friend, if you're listening today and you're a phlegmatic man, or perhaps you love a phlegmatic man, don't mistake their silence for absence of emotion. Many times, silence is simply the language of a heart that has never really learned it was safe to speak. One of the greatest dangers for a phlegmatic is their emotional withdrawal. The more they suppress what they feel, the more disconnected they become from their own emotions. Eventually, they're going to stop recognizing disappointment. They're going to stop recognizing hurt, loneliness, frustration, and sadness. Not because those emotions aren't in them, but because they've spent years burying them. This often will create emotional numbness. We'll call that a wall. And emotional numbness can be dangerous because people stop pursuing connection. They stop communicating their own needs. They stop experiencing anything to change, not because they don't care, but because caring became very painful. And many phlegmatics have learned, if I lower my expectations, I won't get hurt. The problem is that lowering an expectation often lowers intimacy, and they remain physically present while emotionally absent. One of the greatest dangers for a phlegmatic is believing that staying still is safer than taking action. And many spend many years waiting to have that conversation, waiting to address the issue, waiting to express their feelings, waiting to pursue the dream, waiting to set the boundary, and waiting for confidence, waiting for certainty, waiting for the perfect moment. But life keeps moving while they are waiting. What many phlegmatics don't realize is this: staying still is a decision, not speaking is a decision, not acting is a decision, not communicating is a decision, and not pursuing healing is a decision. And every decision has a consequence. The relationship that wasn't discussed will become very distant. The boundary that wasn't established becomes resentment, and the opportunity that wasn't pursued will disappear. The dream, because that dream wasn't acted upon, remains a dream. And many pragmatics tell themselves, I'm waiting for peace. But sometimes what they're really waiting for is certainty. And faith rarely operates in certainty because faith requires movement. And over time, relationships begin suffering. And one of the greatest examples of this principle is found in Numbers 13 and 14, because God had promised Israel the land, the promised land. He had already shown his power. He had already provided for them in the wilderness. But when they arrived at the edge of the promised land, fear gripped them. And they saw giants, they saw obstacles, they saw reasons that they could fail. And instead of moving forward, they stayed still. And because they refused to move forward in faith, they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years in a 3-day journey. Think about that. The promise was right in front of them, but fear kept them from entering it. For many pragmatics, this is exactly what happens emotionally. God places healing in front of them. He'll place a conversation in front of them. He'll give them an opportunity. It will be right in front of them, a relationship in front of them, a marriage, a purpose in front of them. And they wait, they postpone, and they avoid, not because they're rebellious, but because they're afraid. Yet the consequence is the same. They remain stuck. What does that renewal look like for them? Can they be renewed? Well, Ephesians 4:23 tells us be continually renewed in the spirit of the mind. And for the phlegmatic, renewing the mind might sound like my feelings matter, my needs matter, my voice matters. I can have a difficult conversation. I can express hurt without creating conflict. I can ask for what I want. I can trust God while taking action. The renewed mind helps the phlegmatic understand peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of God in the middle of a conflict. Avoidance is not peace. Silence is not peace. Withdrawal is not peace. True peace comes from truth, and true peace comes through honesty. True peace comes through obedience. And a question every phlegmatic should really ask themselves is one of the most powerful questions I think they can ask themselves is what need am I hoping someone notices without me having to say it? That question alone can reveal years of disappointment, years of hurt, years of unmet needs, because often the issue isn't that nobody cares. The issue is that nobody knows, and people cannot respond to needs they do not know exist. Healthy relationships require communication, not mind reading. So, friend, if you're a pragmatic, I want you to hear this today. Your feelings matter. Your needs matter. Your voice matters. You don't have to spend your life withdrawing from your emotions. You don't have to spend your life waiting. You can take action. You don't have to spend your life hoping someone notices. God created you for connection. God created you for relationship. God created you for purpose. And sometimes the greatest act of faith is not waiting. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is taking this first step. The conversation can happen, the boundary can be set, the prayer can be done, the decision can be made, and the healing journey can start, and the opportunity and the next step, because movement is where growth begins. And often the breakthrough you're praying for is waiting on the other side of action. Remember, understanding yourself creates a space for healing awareness, and it creates a space for transformation. And God often reveals the next step after we take the first step. I read a good book. It was called The Disconnected Man, Breaking Down Walls and Restoring Intimacy with Jim Turner. You know what? Oops, sorry, it's upside down. It was an eye opener. Jim offers vital steps for a real change so that men can live lives God had called them to live without losing their character or grace, sacrifice, and deep adding abiding love. He faced his own breakdown of his broken relationship after his wife left. His best friend had told him that he was emotionally unavailable. When God started to show him these broken relationships, he said he began to feel clean and loved, and he felt like he could finally look into God's eyes and let God love him. And he wasn't afraid anymore of intimacy, and he was being healed. And he continues to say that's a daily challenge for him. The disconnected man exposes the issue of disconnection and helps disconnected men and the women who love them begin to move forward in grace and connection. And if you get a chance, read it. I'll put the book in below so you can get it. And I truly recommend it. It was an eye opener, especially for the phlegmatic temperament in the affection area. And I think sometimes we label our men as disconnected when really their temperament has disconnected them. But God has a way of healing and restoring what has been lost. And if you find yourself in this temperament, or if it sounds like you, go to our website, contact us. If you'd like to take the intake form, God has a way, and He has steps that you can take immediately to become a connected person, man or woman. It doesn't matter. It's just, we see it more in men, and the majority of men have been in this temperament, have been disconnected from their emotions and afraid to act. So, just go on our website. Visit us at Faithfully Connected. We'd love to help you. God bless. See you on the next video.